I'm coming to you from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and I wish to acknowledge that I learn and work on Treaty 6 and Métis ancestral lands, the traditional meeting grounds, gathering place, and traveling routes to the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge all the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries. This is where we will strive to honor and transform our relationships with each other. If this is your first time listening to Tales of the LGBTQ+, welcome. This visual and audio podcast has been created to celebrate the fantastic and brilliant people who make up our rainbow community. Right from our very first episode with Dorje, the singing shaman, to today's guest, Vince Spinnato. We've had a wide range of conversations. We don't run away from anything. We just simply bring to light the many contributions that our rainbow community brings to this world. I'm thankful to have this type of platform, and I'm glad that you're here. If you're a returning listener, something right. In fact, I know we're doing something right. Please subscribe on YouTube or on any of the other audio platforms where you can find us, such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. While you're on Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. Those reviews and starred mentions get noticed. Apple then elevates us and they promote us. And as you know, our LGBTQ plus voices should be heard always. So thank you for that as well. Tonight's guest is Vince Spinnato. I've been enjoying engaging with his memoir that we're going to discuss about in length. And I want to read something from his press release because it gets into the essence as to who Vince is. At the age of 10, Vince watched TV soaps with his grandmother and became enamored with the characters on The Young and the Restless, who owned a cosmetics firm. As I throw myself in, I'll forgive him about Y&R. I'm a General Hospital person, but I'll forgive him. He vowed he would follow in the footsteps one day and even chose a name, V.S. Vincenzo, a brand one of his companies still bears. In his memoir, My Pursuit of Beauty, a cosmetic chemist reveals the glitz, the glam, and the batshit crazy. Vince shares the inner workings of the multi-billion dollar beauty industry, entertaining tales about core megastars like Michael Jordan, Jennifer Lopez, Jessica Simpson, and so on. He's created over 300 products for retail establishments that we'll go into tonight. It was recently announced that he will be involved in the creation of something special for the 100th birthday of Judy Garland. I'm excited. This enters into a world we haven't so far been part of here on Tales of the LGBTQ+, and there's no one better to have us delve deeper into this than talking to Vince right now. Please welcome to Tales of the LGBTQ+, Vince Spinnato. Welcome.
Hi, Doug. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you here, Vince. I have to start with two words that came with the press release. Certified nose.
Right.
Now, I now know what it all means, but what is a certified nose?
It's pretty similar to being a sommelier for wine almost. It's kind of in the same boat where you have to, in my case, it's training your nose to be a perfumer and to learn how to put essential oils and fragrances together. You know, all fragrances and fine fragrances have a top note, a middle note, and a bottom note, and you kind of have to learn how they all work together synergistically and build off each other. And a perfumer is kind of like one step above me. It's kind of like the doctorates of putting fragrances together, where I would be like maybe more like the masters, which is what a certified nose is. But I always equate it. It's very, very similar to sommelier because you have to go through hundreds of wines, taste it, train your palate. So I've trained my nose over the last 25 years, where eventually you get to a point where you can certify it. So it actually means it's actually insured. That's my career path. Kind of like Sid Sarish, insured her legs back in the 1950s, or Ginger Rogers. That's kind of what I have for my nose. So it's really my, if it's not working right, I'm in bad shape with my business.
Yeah, so a Lloyd's of London insurance type thing where you have to make sure that you insure your assets. It
Right.
had to have been through the last year when they were announcing the side effects of COVID and having it be perhaps the loss of smell. You
Yeah.
must have been scared for your life or
Yeah.
your industry.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. 'Cause that was the very, very first thing on my mind. Said, "Oh my God, if I get this thing, I lucky enough I didn't get it so far. And if I said if I ever get this thing, I wonder what it's going to do to my nose." So I was worried about that. And I've had actually multiple nose jobs in my life as well. I never liked the way my nose looked, and also they had not come out. They haven't turned out well either. So I have a lot of damage inside right now that still need to get fixed. So it's all been a little bit kind of a sticky wicket, I get to call it, as we're making sure that my nose stays intact.
Yeah, it's that slippery slope. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't, and you have
Right.
to pray that everything works out in the end.
Yeah.
I loved hearing about you sitting down with your grandmother and just in being involved in those soap operas. In your case, Young and the Restless. For
Yeah.
myself, it was General Hospital.
Trader.
And yeah, Trader it is. But hey, we had Emma Sams on General Hospital.
That's very
So
true. And she's one of the most loveliest ladies I ever met. And so I have nothing bad to say about her, that's for sure.
yeah, well, we're going to get into Emma Sams a little bit later because she is an actress that I've deeply respected for sure.
Right.
I love the fact that you took the business that was key in Young and the Restless and you identified and you've built the brand yourself. So, can you talk a little bit about your beginnings and where you came across this field itself?
Yeah, and it really started at a crazy, crazy young age, as early as 7 or 8, which is really nuts. But I give full credit to the creator of Young and Restless, William Bell. It's kind of an embarrassing story, but it's just really where I got the idea from. As you mentioned in the opening, they had a fictitious cosmetic company called Jabot, which is what the show is about. And again, I just being so young and watching with my grandmother after school every day, I just that's oh, this is really cool. And I didn't know that was even done. And probably even to this day, you probably haven't met too many cosmetic chemists in your life. It's not a very popular, field or industry. So I really didn't know that at the time. I thought it kind of was like a very normalized thing because it was right there on TV. And I never deviated from what I wanted to do. And then, so I really was shaped by that show. And then the creme de la creme came in 1981, the Aaron Spelling's Dynasty, and that completely ruined me. So it was growing up with the Young and Restless, which is kind of what I wanted to do for a living. And then Dynasty was more about the stuff and throwing things around at people, saying, "Why did you do that?" Throw a martini in their face, whatever it was going to be. So that was between the combination of Dynasty and the Young and Restless that unfortunately shaped my life. It probably wasn't probably too good really example to kind of learn how to go through life. That's for sure.
Well, it makes it awkward when you're in the middle of perhaps an argument and you have to stop for commercials with that slow scene.
Right.
It doesn't really happen the same in real life.
Right. Or slap somebody.
Exactly. You just don't want to get into that too often itself.
Yeah.
Was your grandmother still around when you started your business itself?
No. She passed away when I was 11, but I started officially when I was 19. But as early as 14 or 15, I had already was already working with my friend who was a graphic artist. I remember sitting with her as a junior in high school, sitting on the floor in our theater room. We used to do kind of the shows together, me and my girls and Damn Yankees and all these things like that. And she developed my first logo for my company when I was 15 years old, and that's still my logo today, 25 years later. I kept it out of just respect for her and just the background of it, and that it really means something to me.
That's incredible. When I was reading your memoir, I was struck by just how you have no fear, that you have that go-get-itness that a lot of successful people have. I just want to say here that your memoir, once again, is titled My Pursuit of Beauty. A Cosmetic Chemist Reveals the Glitz, the Glam, and the Batshit Crazy. Have you always had that je ne sais pas, don't care, I'm just going to do it attitude?
I did actually, and I don't know exactly where it came from, except I had to again go back to those shows, and that was probably maybe more about Dynasty, because that was much more about entrepreneurship and in that period of time in the 80s, women trying to go out and get it for the first time, and so the main characters, really the business characters, were really Joan Collins' character played Alexis Carrington Colby Dexter Rowan, and John Forsythe's character played Blake Carrington. So they all were entrepreneurs. I can't really give it credit to anywhere else except for just watching it from there. So I was wired that way from day one. But I think even without those shows, just the way I'm wired. I remember even one time going in for a regular job interview when I was like 17 or 18, and I wasn't being a smartass. I just really didn't comprehend what was happening. They would say, "Hey, you got to be here at 8 o'clock." I was like, "Well, I'll be there like around 10." And they're like, "Well, you got to wear a tie." Well, I mean, I won't be wearing a tie. So I wasn't even being like a smart. I just really didn't understand somebody else telling me what to do. Like, I didn't get it. So, and unfortunately, that never changed. Now, I'm a phenomenal collaborator. I work great with people. I have a phenomenal team of people. We've been working together for 25 plus years. So I love working with people. I just don't want to tell me what to do. I guess. I don't know what it is.
So you definitely have this go-get-itness. You also have maybe perhaps a little bit of clumsiness. Can you share with our listeners? Yeah, can you share with our listeners a particular wine story that took place at a restaurant?
Well, that brings in the world famous Lauren Bacall, and I met her. Speaking of go-gettingness, I actually it's a little bit uncouth, I should say, but I kind of crashed Jimmy Stewart's funeral, which was another big icon of mine that I really admired, and I was working in Beverly Hills at the time, and he had passed away, and his funeral was a couple days later, and right across the street was where he was having his mass at and his burial in Beverly Hills. And I from across the street, I saw everybody going in. I mean, Bob Hope, Kate Hepburn, Lauren Bacall, Ann Miller, Katherine Grayson. I mean, all the old Hollywood, really what I call Hollywood royalty, pretty much. And I'm like, I got it. So I went into church, and I just sat in the back of the church, and I just paid, and I really respected Jimmy Stewart. So I actually was there and gave my true respects and the whole thing. And on the way out in the parking lot, I just kind of waited there, and I ran into Lauren Bacall, and I had just complimented on the fragrance she was wearing, and we just started chatting. And I started telling her what I did for a living, and I said, "Oh, I'd love to sit down with you one day." And a couple weeks later, her publicist called me and said, "You want to have lunch? You want to have lunch with you?" So I did. I sat down and had lunch with her at the famous Ivy restaurant in Beverly Hills, which is, I mean, anyone from the LA area will know the Ivy, and it's where everybody goes and where all paparazzi goes. And I met her there. And it was just an event where every single thing that could have gone wrong went wrong. You almost would have to pay somebody to have that many things go wrong. She came in a beautiful Donna Karan white suit with a big hat, and she looked absolutely stunning. And the Ivy is kind of famous. They have these cobblestone floors. You kind of sit out on the deck with all these tables that are never really balanced. So, I mean, we were only there for 5 minutes, and I ordered us wine, and I put my elbow down on the table. The wine went flying on her, right onto her suit, and she still was gracious enough to stay. And then 10 minutes later, her spaghetti came, and I don't know why she ordered spaghetti, but she did, and I knocked that out of her hand into her. So it really was just a disaster from beginning to end. And you would think that, I thought really we were hitting it off really well, and that was kind of like, I'm done, I'm out, and she left, and we left kind of like on very good terms. But I never did hear from her again. That was a one and done, and I thought maybe I would have heard from her again, but I never did.
Oh, damn. So you mentioned, going to Jimmy Stewart's funeral and becoming part of that. Is there a celebrity that you have met where you have been starstruck or you've had fear in approaching at all?
Not really. I'm not really a starstruck person. Only because I think I've worked with them, for so long. I mean, I have my favorites, for sure. But I never really like. I don't get like kind of stumble on my words. I don't get nervous. I mean, I don't want their autograph, nothing like that. Because I think I worked with in some of the biggest ones in the industry. So I don't really get. I mean, I definitely have ones I'd want to work with, for sure, but not like where I would, be starstruck really about it. I just kind of like. I always kind of joke. We have all of our clients range from housewives to the biggest celebrities in the world. And I tell everybody, I tell the celebrities and I tell the housewives, I say, your money is just as green as Beyonce's. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it doesn't matter to me who you are. Everyone gets the same attention. Everyone gets treated the same way. Every client gets the same amount of time. And that's kind of how I kind of go after it and kind of lay it out there to each of the clients.
When I was reading your memoir, I was thinking about my great uncle Marvin during it, and in a completely different field than yours. My great uncle Marvin spent his entire life trying to find a perfect hybrid in creating a lily that was perfectly black with no other tints in it, no other colors. And he passed away before he was able to do that. You've been in this industry now for 25 years, created all of these products. Is there an elusive smell, an elusive product that's just outside your fingertips that you are striving to achieve?
Good question. And actually, Doug, it changed all the time only because of the fact that technology keeps changing. So one of the ways as chemists, we kind of can keep reformulating and staying on the cutting edge is that we have raw material suppliers that come to see us and give us, what's coming out new in the world for really, it's honestly new technology. And when that new technology, comes out, that triggers new ideas all the time. And so we have new technology. I would say every couple of years, this is new and this is new. And so even with my own personal product line, that I launched, only a couple of years ago, I've been working on it for 20 plus years, and I was standing in my own way because I kept wanting to change it and revise it and revise it and revise it. Again, I kept being presented new technology. So it really was kind of to say, okay, Vince, I mean, figure this out, dial it in. What do you want it to be? And I finally did that eventually, which is now the Caviar and Diamond skincare lines that I have.
Yeah. So let's go back to the very first product that got you recognition and a little bit of fame. What was that product that launched you into this world?
Well, it was one that kind of led to the other that kind of helped both out. I got to, I always know the exact day I got to Los Angeles. I never forget it because I actually got to Los Angeles in 1995 on the OJ verdict result day. So I pulled into the city and all the streets were empty because I didn't know if there was going to be riots or what was going to happen. And I remember, I still had my U-Haul attached to me and I was going into a bar trying to see what the OJ verdict was going to be. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is I met in this high-end bar in Beverly Hills, I met Beverly Sassoon, who was Vidal Sassoon's ex-wife at the time. So it really was the very, very first day I was there. I had met with her, and I found out, a couple weeks later after we kind of got a little friendly that she had won the hair care line in a divorce. And Vidal got to keep his name and his salons and all his accolades for that, and she kept the hair care line. So long story short, she had to revamp the whole hair care line. So I joined her as a free intern consultant to start learning how to work on the formulation. In this case, happened to be hair care. And she shared the same publicist and the same managing agency as Jennifer Lopez. And Jennifer Lopez was already very big, but she was not at the like gigantic like she is now. She just was kind of coming up. So she was my very first project, and I worked on her fragrance called Still, which is her second fragrance. Well, she had a first one called Glow, and she was very successful with that. But I worked with a conglomerate of people. It was, I think Coty was a company at the time, which is $1 billion corporation, to put the fragrance out. So I really was just a consultant, but it was the very first one where I could say, oh, I worked on a Jennifer Lopez fragrance, and that rolled into Michael Jordan, and then Jessica Simpson, and then so on. So that was really, they all kind of, so I became by default this celebrity cosmetic chemist and perfumer just by, it was all referrals, because you can't really advertise for what we do. You can't go in a magazine and say, okay, looking for a cosmetic chemist. I mean, who the hell's looking for a cosmetic chemist? So you have to really, it's all kind of referral.
You mentioned Michael Jordan, and so just Jennifer Lopez, Michael Jordan.
Mhm.
When consulting with both of them with what they wanted to create, were there similarities and differences with, let's say, they went about it being female and male, or was it simply just having the best product they can?
Well, they always want the best product, of course, but those two were polar opposites, only in the sense because Jennifer Lopez's fragrance was for women and it was very high end prestige market, and Michael Jordan at the time was just launching his Air Jordan sneakers, so he was really in bed with Foot Locker, the Foot Locker sneaker chain. So his was being developed for more of a mass market mall kind of setting, and actually launched and stayed in a Foot Locker. So it was a very, very different demographic and people that wanted to buy it, and a different market. So it was really more of a mass market cologne versus kind of a high end prestige fragrance. So there were very different ways to put it together for sure.
Is there
I
a
had to
different
learn all that.
Is there a different pressure when it comes to that? Or with it being high end, it's got to have a certain scent, it's got to have a certain prestige to it, whereas maybe mass market can be more generic. I'm saying this as a non-certified nose person, but is there a different pressure when it comes to this?
There is, and it's not, again, more. It's not necessarily one is more generic than the other, but that's kind of a good word to still use. But it's really more like a fine fragrance, for example. You'd use like kind of when you going out in a town, or you do a couple sprays. Where like a cologne or like a mass market more ish cologne, kind of like an Axe body spray, for example, right? That's for the whole entire body. You spray it from from neck to nuts all the way down. You do the whole thing, and it's kind of like colognes. It's always, they're always stronger. Like for example, like colognes normally have like a 20% ish complete oil content, and like fine fragrances are kind of like 12 to 15%. So fine fragrances are a lower oil content, meaning they're kind of softer and more muted. Where colognes for men or even like colognes for women, which is like Old Fashioned Joy or Shalimar or even Chanel number 5, they're kind of at that 20% level, which they're more kind of robust in a way, and they're stronger. So Michael Jordan was always kind of meant to be like a more of a body spray type cologne than actually like a fine fragrance.
I've never thought of this before, and I feel bad because I'm a gay man and I should really have thought about these things. But is there a magic spot on the body, whether it's male or female, non-binary body, where the fragrance is best suited? Whether it's
both the wrists, and you rub them together, and then the neck, because they permeate those parts of the body. So, for example, if you just think about just moving your hand throughout the day, right, you're permeating the fragrance into the air. And of course, if you get, and the neck part really is more about love. If you have a lover or a significant other, that's where where the people are smelling it from. And also, a lot of people also like to spray it and then actually run through the cloud, so you can kind of get it on the whole body. There's kind of a lot of ways to do it, but the really definitely the wrist is number one, because that's where it kind of permeates from in the air. Because we're always using our hands and talking or moving or writing or driving or whatever we're going to be doing.
If I was to go through your washroom and try to find things, what is Vince Spinnato wearing as far as cologne?
You actually would laugh, because and most cosmetic chemists will tell you this, and perfumers, that we literally have our bathrooms that look horrible, because it's all unlabeled stuff in the lab. Because normally I'm using everything that I'm working on to make sure we don't test on animals, we test on ourselves, literally. So it's I really have stuff from what I'm working on for my clients, and we're kind of making sure they smell right or work right. Again, we develop everything: hair care, skin care, bath and body, manicure, pedicure, baby products, energy drinks, pet products. And fine fragrance. So fine fragrance is just one area of what we do. So we're always. I literally have very ugly, medicine cabinets, because we have all these unlabeled, unmarked, things that are in there. But with that being said, I do have some Tom Ford fragrances that I like very much, that I wear. I wear Black Velvet from him. I wear one called Fucking Fabulous, which is one. I'm sorry for the language, but that's what it's actually called. So I wear that one. So I like the Tom Ford collection and stuff, but I can't really use what I'm developing too often, because if you work on a project for 18 months, you want to smell anymore. You want to vomit when you're done. You're done. It's like, it's kind of like baking. If you're baking all day long, you don't necessarily want to, like, I have a couple of good friends that are Godiva chocolatiers. They're like, they see chocolate, they want to vomit. They have no interest in actually, me and you went, and we probably like dive into the chocolate vat, right? And I'd be like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. Right.
Amen.
Yeah.
I think my left hip is full of Godiva chocolate at the moment, and will be for a few more years to come.
I got to have one piece of chocolate a day at least of something.
There's all these interesting stories that come up from it. But in general, 25 years, you are a young man in this industry still. You've grown wisely. You've gone into this industry. So, of course, 25 is a nice year. But why now to have this memoir come out?
It was, I totally know the reason. I was when you mentioned my grandmother, I was very close to my grandmother, and she passed away when I was 11. And this is all in the book. And I was with her alone when she had a heart attack and passed away. And I was left alone at 11 years old. So I gave her CPR. I called 911, the whole thing. And long story short, a couple hours later, when we went to the hospital, and she had passed away, at that kind of age, I'm not really meant to be back in the ER, but I was sneaking around and trying to find out what was going on. And my parents never knew this, even to the day they died. They never knew this. I heard this, but I overheard the doctor, telling my parents that your son, being me, inadvertently killed your mother because he crushed her rib cage trying to bring her CPR. I was trying so hard, I guess. So again, I heard that at 11, and I carried that with me for almost 30 years. So the reason why I'm mentioning all that I was in therapy since I was 11 years old, about 2 times a week till I was about 33 years old, which is not that, it was only about 10 years ago. And what happened was, I remember having my session at 33 years old. I had my regular meeting. I went in, laid on the couch, did the whole thing. And 20 minutes into that one session, like a light bulb just went off. And I said, I literally could not stand the sound of my own voice anymore. I could not hear myself talk anymore for one more second. And I was like, you know what, doctor? I said, I'm done. I said, I'm like done. I've been in therapy for 20 years, 25 years, I guess it was at that point. I'm like, I'm done. And I walked out of the room that day. And that night, I started talking to a tape recorder and started writing my book. I have every learning disability you can imagine, from ADD to dyslexia to OPP, PMS, ESPN. I mean, everything you can imagine. So I knew I had to get a ghostwriter, and I got a ghostwriter, Mickey Goodman, out of Atlanta, Georgia, who I collaborated with for over almost 7 years. So every single word in the book is mine, but she put it into a beautiful, comprehensive, readable story, which I was never going to be able to do. So it really became me telling my ghostwriter my story was my therapy, and I got it all out, and that's why I did it. And you mentioned I have a lot of things that have happened. So I mean, I can go. I'm sitting on the ocean right now. I can go out in the ocean, go for a swim, and get hit by a train. So don't ask me how, but it could happen. But so that's just like, so that's what all my book is kind of about. And then I always kind of get asked at the very end, oh, what do you want people to take away from your book when you read it? And I get literally nothing. Please do not take anything away from this book. I'm like, read it, enjoy it, and do the opposite of everything that happened in the book. You'll be successful a lot faster. I mean, if you take anything away from it, I'll be disappointed. It's like, just don't do any of that.
Yeah, do everything the opposite of it. And yeah, it was a fun ride.
Yeah. You ain't kidding.
While going through the ups and downs and stories that go with it. And my questions are being asked of you because I know this, but 9/11, you have a story that goes with 9/11 as well. Before I ask you to go about it, for listeners, I had just landed in Hong Kong when 9/11 had taken place. I had gone over to China to teach. And when we got off the plane, the Chinese authorities were asking us if we had seen anything, etc. And for myself, when we got to the mainland, everything was blocked. So I lived this idyllic life, not actually knowing anything that happened with 9/11 until I came back to Canada a year later. Otherwise, we did not know with what was going on. Now I'm interested in more 9/11 stories, and you've got one for the ages as well.
Yeah, mine's very, very, very close to, I mean, post 9/11 by like 11 days. But it all has to do with that. And actually, I owe Canada my life, literally. So I tell my boyfriend right now is Canadian, and I always tell him that your country saved my life, and it did. And long story short is that I in America, we shut down air traffic. We shut down air travel for about 10 days. After 9/11 happened, the very, very first day we went back to flying was on the 22nd of September. And I was on one of the first, day, I was on the very first day of flying, and I was going to Toronto. I actually was going to the Royal York in Toronto, Fairmont property. I do a lot of the hotel amenities for the Fairmont chain, and as being a Canadian, everybody knows Fairmonts. So I was, and as I was leaving my house that day, I remember just getting ready to turn off my TV, and I remember at the time Donald Rumsfeld, who was our director of Homeland Security at the time. I think that's what he was. Talking about rules of engagement, which is the rules of being shot down and or not something ever would go wrong again. So I had that kind of in the back of my mind. And that very first day back to flying, I mean, if you were in the airport and somebody sneezed, you dove on the floor. Everybody was so shaken and just nervous, and I mean, a wreck from what had just happened. It was a very stressful flight. And lo and behold, we had two a husband and wife potential terrorist group on our flight, that as we were getting ready to take off, this was I was flying Air Canada. That's why I mentioned in Canada. So I was on an Air Canada flight flying to Toronto from LAX, and these two people tried to put toilet paper and stuff down the toilet and kind of light it on fire, and they were trying to blow us up over downtown Los Angeles. So make a long story, because the story would go on forever. I mentioned rules of engagement. At that point, we knew we had terrorists on planes, and we were trying to be taken out. And so we had the U.S. government called fighter jets to bring us over the Pacific Ocean to shoot us down. And what saved our life was that we were a Canadian aircraft, and even though we were Americans, it was on a Canadian aircraft. And at the time, the technology wasn't like it is today. They could not get a hold of your prime minister in Ottawa at the time, and I think it actually was Trudeau's father, I believe, is who was there at the time. And they couldn't get a hold of them. And that's what saved our life, is that we were over the Pacific Ocean for 15, 20 minutes waiting for the shoot down order, which had to come from Canada. We couldn't shoot down a Canadian aircraft. So if we were an American aircraft, we would have been long gone, because it was already in place. So we found all that out later. We didn't know any of that till like a couple days later. But that's what that's why I always kind of joke and say Canada saved my life, because it happened to be the right aircraft. If we were on an American flight, we would have been shot down.
The prime minister at that time would have been Jean Chrétien. The title of this podcast is Tales of the LGBTQ+, and we really haven't talked much about the LGBTQ+ section. We've mentioned Jennifer Lopez, and of course she's an icon for everyone. But when I've been talking to people about tonight and this podcast itself, I've been talking about Judy Garland.
Right.
And you have a long friendship with Lorna Luft. Right. And it was recently announced by Lorna Luft and Liza Minnelli. Mm-hmm. I have to say Liza with a Z, but if she was Canadian, it would be Liza with a Z.
The Z.
They both announced that you are going to be part of commemorating Judy Garland's 100th birthday, with how you're going to be involved in that next year.
And the answer is yes, which I'm very excited about. And by the way, we mentioned earlier about Starstruck, and about where I said I'm really not. I'm actually kind of starstruck in reverse. So I'm more starstruck about the deceased legends, in my opinion. Again, Marilyn Monroe, Judy Garland, Grace Kelly, etc. So this is by far my most exciting project. I am developing the fine fragrance for Judy for her 100th birthday, which is June 10th, 2022. And as we all know, the gay community, that everything, she passed away in June. She was born in June. Stonewall happened in June. So our gay rainbow flag is because of Over the Rainbow, because of Judy Garland. So she's very, very, tied in to the gay community, as we all know. So I'm really, really excited about that. And the most important reason why I was chosen, because everybody wanted this business. I mean, the big companies, the Unilevers and the Givaudan's and the Cody's and the and the Procter and Gamble, they all wanted to do this fragrance for her, and the family chose to work with me because number one, I'm a fan, and I told them that from the very beginning, and we knew each other, but they really knew I was going to trust, really protect her mother's body of work and her legacy and the iconicness of her. So I'm working really hands-on with Lorna almost on a weekly basis. So she's seeing everything, saying no, yes, I love it, I hate it, change this, change that. My mother would not like this. My mother would love this. My mother would like. So it's been amazing being able to work with both her daughters, because we're kind of getting a normally if you work with a deceased client with the estate or the trust, you don't get any of this feedback, right? Because they're not around. But because Lorna and Liza are actually intimately involved, we get all this feedback. So everything that we're doing for her is so custom and dialed in, and really goes into our very first conversation was, as a perfumer, I'm like, okay, what did your mother used to love? What did she wear? What did she used to smell like? So it was really very, very personal. And so we have it really, really specifically dialed in based on what her daughters are able to tell me. And Joey too, who is their son. Joey left. He's not as involved, but he's part of the the estate and the trust, of course. So having all three children alive has been very, very helpful. And this is by far my most exciting project. I'm most honored with this project. And really it's more about them allowing me to and trusting me to protect the legacy of such an icon like this.
Yeah. So it's June of next year when that will be released, I would assume, commemorating that. When do you have to have the fragrance finished by in order to bottle, package, advertise for the release date?
It's already very tight right now. And to your point, it's going to launch on our 100th birthday, which is June 10th, 2022. And again, one thing I knew from the very beginning before I started this process is still what a gigantic fan base she has, and a very, very dedicated fan base. And you're talking like the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. Just in America alone. So one thing I wanted to do from the very beginning was to have them be able to be engaged in the process and actually be able to participate. So I already been for about 8 months been working on the fragrance with Lorna specifically, and we've been going through many revisions and doing it, and we have it narrowed down to 3, purposely down to 3. And what we're doing in the month of September is actually we're running a scent strip in all the major publications and modern luxury publications, which is a publication house in America, that we're going to have America and be able to vote on the fragrance. So Judy fans and Americans are going to be able to vote on this fragrance in 21 major cities in America, and actually be able to scan a QR code and vote for Judy A, B, or C, and we're going to let America decide. And the Judy fans. So I'm really excited about doing that, because we're really getting them engaged from the very beginning, and also we really want to kind of give a nod and a nod and respect to them, saying we're really trying to protect her legacy and bring it into the 21st century. And obviously I'm making it unisex, because we don't want to alienate the gay male market or the female market. I hope that heterosexual men will buy it as well. But the two categories really are female and the gay male market. So that's who we're targeting. So it's very hard. You mentioned about fragrances, about the cologne, and then we talked about the cologne and the perfume. This is way, way, way more difficult to find that sweet spot where you and me want to buy it, but also a straight woman. So it's really been a challenge. That's what the hardest piece has been so far.
Yeah. Congratulations with this, Vince. This is amazing to hear with what you've got coming up. But to have created this sweet spot for yourself within the industry, it's just amazing with what you've been able to accomplish. Just
thank you. Yeah.
Mind-boggling.
It's been exciting. It's been a roller coaster and exciting, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, and so you've got this fragrance coming out, but then you also have something else coming out. And if you're watching here on YouTube, you would be able to see the poster over Vince's shoulder, and it's called Skin Deep. And it's a documentary. You have a documentary coming out about your 25 years within the industry and your life itself. We were talking beforehand that it's scheduled for the fall. We're not sure exactly the dates. It's going to the film festivals, etc. But how did Skin Deep come about?
That's really almost kind of a deeper dive into the book. So it's really kind of showing, I always say America because that's where I live, but showing the world, that now we're talking to Canada here, showing the world how products are kind of made from concept to launch. So it's really taking the whole process of how we go through the, working with the clients through the R&D work, getting the product made. And then also all my personal life is involved in as well. Like you mentioned, I have a trillion things that have happened to me, so it's all, the documentary was following me around for about 7 years. So it's a good chunk of my life. And it just actually, when I started the book, and from the very beginning, we always wanted to do the book and also the documentary to kind of show the parallel to how we're actually physically making stuff and getting it done. So it kind of documents, why I got into the beauty industry, how we put the stuff together, our manufacturing plan, how you actually see it get put together, and again, and to your point, all the ups and downs, which were a lot in just the last 7 years, to get there, which has been a lot. My house burned down. I had all kinds of medical problems. Both parents passed away. Lost a fiance. Lost a couple of animals. I mean, so it's really been a lot of drama. And just those 7 years alone, which I don't know how I even got through, to be honest.
But you did. With you doing the film festival circuit as well, Edmonton, where I'm based here in Alberta, Canada, has a brilliant international film festival, which just happens to be a nomination ground for the documentaries for the Oscars. So keep that in mind if you ever want to get up to this neck of the woods. I'll
tell my director for sure. That probably one's not on his radar, but I have heard of that one. I do know it's a good one.
Yeah, it's a fantastic one. So you definitely need to be part of it. I hope, and I'm confident that part of the documentary as well will talk about something that you have had your entire life when it comes to, I don't want to use the word disease because I'm not sure if that's the right word.
A disorder. Yeah,
a disorder. That's the word.
Yeah. Right.
And I also don't want to butcher the pronunciation of the name.
Don't even bother trying to say it. It's almost impossible. But it's called trichotillomania. It's a really hard word to say. And long story short, it's compulsive hair pulling, which I've had my whole life. And I talked about my grandmother, and normally it's triggered by a traumatic event. It affects mostly women, actually. So I'm one of the unfortunately, one of the minority of men that have it. And it happened literally like almost 10 days after my grandmother passed away. So I know, unequivocally what triggered it and why it happened. And I remember I was watching a movie called Revenge of the Nerds, which was like a really popular movie in the 80s. And I started that movie down in my basement. It was like on a VCR tape, and I turned it on. And 2 hours later, when the movie was over, I had a pile of hair on the floor, the size of a coaster. So I don't know how it gets started, but we know it started by a traumatic event. It's kind of really tied into a lack of serotonin in the body. Most people, women and girls and guys, most of the time get it at puberty. At the age like 11, 12, 13, 14 is normally kind of where it pops up. And it's on the same category, like kind of like cutters and nail biting. So that's kind of the same realm it falls in. And there's no cure for it or nothing like that. Just really you have to learn how to kind of manage it and deal with it. So it's not a very talked about disorder because it's kind of like it's an embarrassing disorder. A lot of people try and cover it up. It's much more difficult for women because they can't really justify or explain the bald patches where men we have, a lot of times where men are balding, right? So it's easier kind of to explain, but not at 11, 12, 15 or 20 years old. But that's one of my worst for me. I always had big bald patches in my head. So it was always, hard to try and explain to people what was going on.
I love the fact that you and others are talking about these truths, and it's fantastic to hear in many ways because there's going to be someone who's going to listen to this podcast or read your book and going to go, oh, it's not just me.
Right.
Because I'm confident that if somebody just did a Google search, they're going to fall down a rabbit hole, and it's not going to be pretty when it comes to images or what gets discussed or what gets said. So I'm really glad and really proud that people like yourself are talking about something like this. So
Right.
it's not something that can be cured or medication, but it's therapy, it's learning.
Right, learning and management, right? Like for example, I always like to say, I'm not embarrassed to say, I mean, I found my own vices. The two things that I do, one is that one of the things that we know for sure that's tied to is a lack of UVB in your skin, which actually raises serotonin. And UVB is encapsulated, like in tanning beds, for example. Like UV is more UVA in a regular sun than there is so tanning beds is one thing. It's not good for your skin, obviously. So it's got a downside, and I'm a chemist, right? So that's a horrible thing to say, But I go about once or twice a month. I go for a tanning bed session to kind of raise my serotonin level. And the other thing I do once a month is I have my whole entire body professionally waxed from like my head all the way down to my feet, and it kind of gives me a fix. So it's a way of me managing, kind of like almost kind of like a smoker wanting to have a cigarette, right? But for trichotillomania, what for me personally, if I just do it one time a month, it seems to be help me manage it. Like I haven't pulled the hair on my head for almost 5 years, which is a really long time, but I always will find like leg hair or armpit hair or pubic hair. I mean, it really can do eyebrows, lashes. It really could be anything. So I try. That's how I personally manage it, and it works for me. So I always like to talk about it because maybe it could be. I mean, it's tied into science, so I think it could work for a lot of people if they go ahead and try it out. But it's hard to advocate. They're going to a tanning bed when I'm a person developing sunscreens, for example, right, for the beauty industry. So it's not you're preaching what I do, right?
Yeah, all the images, and there's so many questions, but at the same time, I'm cognizant of the time that we have here tonight with each other. When it comes, what's that?
You don't have 2 days together?
If you want to, we can. I've got no problems with that.
Just 48 hours straight of everything Vince and Doug.
I love it. We'll take it on the road, and we'll just see who we can gather in. It'll be our own little cult, and that would be fantastic too. I know after been inside for all this time with the COVID, I'm thinking a cult would be nice. I kid. Let's go back to your work in the fragrances and the people that you work with. The future when it comes to celebrity fragrances, or have we oversaturated the market? As you said, housewives and other celebrities.
Right.
Can there be too much of this?
Yes, I mean there's so much out there even now. So it's a very competitive market. But to your point, it's really kind of finding a niche. And like I mentioned, the technology. So what you had 20 years ago, even the big brands like an Oil of Olay or an Aveeno or a Neutrogena, which are phenomenal companies, they got to keep revamping, even revising their own product. They don't leave them where they were in the late 90s, or they keep the packaging the same, and the performance the same, but they have to upgrade their ingredients and always kind of change it to always kind of evolve. And it's really and the beauty industry is gigantic. We've been sandwiched for a long time in between liquor and oil, which are two biggest. So in between the two, so we're a multi-trillion-dollar corporation, and so it's really a gigantic business. And for example, you probably can't think of anybody that doesn't shave, brush their teeth, or wash their hair, right? Unless they're a transient on the street. So that's kind of a note. So really, is there too much? I mean, no, but also maybe yes. But I mean, maybe there's too much kind of like niche stuff. But you always kind of want to find the very unique, thing. Like working with the Judy Garland estate and heirs now. I by default have already kind of almost been shifted in a new direction. I already have 2 other gigantic icons that are deceased and passed away from the 40s and 50s that their camps have already reached out to me. So it's going to be, it's not going to be a one and done, thing with Judy Garland, which is very exciting. These other 2 ladies are gigantic as well. So I'm really excited that. So I took a little bit of a shift with this Judy Garland thing, which a good shift, and I'm very excited about it.
Yeah. The contracts with the families of the other icons, are they signed that you can announce those names, or is it still?
No, they're not yet. No, yeah, they're not yet.
Yeah.
So I can't.
Okay. So here's the plan. Next year in June, you're going to be overly busy, but you're going to come back on and you're going to you're going to de-stress, and we'll do a therapy session here, and
Yeah,
we'll get it out, and then we'll send you off.
de-stress is a good word.
Yeah, absolutely. Vince, there's all these amazing stories. And again, I go back to you having no fear. When reading the book, I'm just like, could I do this? And part of me says yes at times, but other times no. And I'm amazed with what you've been able to accomplish. We haven't touched upon sexuality, yourself being a gay man.
Yeah.
How has being gay and being part of this community, how has it been an advantage for you as you've navigated your life and your career?
You know what's really weird about me personally? I don't think I've ever. I don't know why this is. I don't have the answer to this. I just don't really ever think about it. It's just never been on my radar. I'm like, in my mind, it's kind of like blah 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 blah, and I happen to be gay. Rather, like I'm gay and I'm doing blah blah blah. So it's not really on purpose. I just never really looked at it. I'm not quite sure, why. I sometimes even forget I'm gay till I'm in bed with a guy. So I don't. It's not like I'm not trying to hide anything. But it's like I just never really. It's never been like my forefront thing. Like I personally never really attended like the gay pride parade, and again, not for a reason. I just didn't feel motivated. I've been to one, and being a 47-year-old gay guy, going to one is a very low number. I mean, it's just not something. I never been to the white parties or to that kind of stuff. I don't even have any gay friends. I really don't. All my friends are straight. Again, not on purpose. I just don't have them. So my boyfriend is gay, which because he kind of has to be, right, to make it work out. I should say now he'll get mad at me. But yeah. So it never was really a forefront thing for me. It just was. Here's Vince doing all the shit, and he happens to be gay. Okay, great. And that really was it. But I'd love to be more involved and I'm a big, philanthropist. I love being able to give back and doing what I could do. And so I'm all for that for sure.
With what you were saying just now, that's very common for many people, myself even included. You live your life, and as you mentioned, you go to bed and you go, oh, it's a guy who's in the bed with you, and you don't think about it as much since you get past a certain age and you have your own confidence within it. So with what you said makes sense. But at the same time, with you doing the Judy Garland fragrance, and it's coming out in June, you are going to be covered in rainbow flags and glitter next year, my friend.
I hope so. I want to, for her sake and for mine. And she deserved the accolades for it. I mean, she really, again, it wasn't her fault. I mean, her passing away and the coinciding with the same night as the day after Stonewall, just kind of it was all these forces happening at one time, but she became a gay icon, and she just is, and it's never going to change, and she was, and talking to her daughters while she was alive, she also was very, very, a big gay advocate. So it wasn't like something she just did by accident after she passed away. It was going on in real life too when she was, alive and well. So that's great to know. And so that's the fun part for me. Even stuff that none of us would know, I'm getting all the behind the scenes stories of what actually happened. What didn't happen, what was real, what wasn't real. But that's been amazing talking to her daughters. It's like knowing, it's so cool. I mean, knowing what happened. Oh, what happened behind the scenes of the Easter parade with Fred Astaire? What really happened on the set of Wizard of Oz? How MGM really did starve her and wouldn't let her eat any food. I mean, all these stories we kind of know about, have all been to I got to hear all the real stories, Yeah,
and the stories behind the stories, which is brilliant in itself. I'm going to put a couple of things on the screen for our YouTube listeners. First of all, if you want to know more about what Vince is up to, you can find his Instagram. It is just his first and last name, Vince Spinnato, VinceSpinnato. You can find him on Instagram. You can go to his website, which again is his first and last name. And if people go to your website, which I hope they do tonight or whenever they do listen to this podcast, what are they going to find on your personal website, Vince?
It's everything Vince. It's the documentary link, the book, my product line, Go into my TurnKey Beauty site, which is my business, which is where the Judy Garland fragrance is going to live. So really, pretty much everything is there at one touch.
We need to mention the skincare line itself, which Vincenzo, Vincenzo, skincare.com. And as we learned tonight, it has roots to him growing up and Young and the Restless. What is your favorite product that people can discover from this website?
We have a 4-piece comprehensive kit. So it's all kind of in a kit. So they all synergistically work together. But my personal favorite is the actual Caviar and Diamond cream. So it's got real diamond dust in it, which is considered diamond cert. And back to Canada again, we're actually getting our diamond cert from De Beers in Canada. We have a commission with them where we actually get the diamond dust and get it not mined for it. We just get what's left over, and we move to our manufacturing plant. And diamond dust is an earth metal, and it's very, very rich in copper PCA, zinc PCA, magnesium PCA, and all of these PCAs are amazing for your skin. It helps with cell turnover and making your epidermis kind of regenerate faster. And then we have the caviar portion, which is, our bodies are roughly about 75% oceanic elements. The other 25% are again, earth metals. So we have kind of this oceanic earth metals combination to really replenish those things back into the skin that we lose on a daily basis and on a yearly basis as we actually age. So it's the last thing I'll say about it, it's called also, the whole line is called an instant gratifier, meaning that you can see and feel the results within 15, 20, or 30 seconds. So it means that the product's tight and firm on contact. You can see and actually feel it right there when you try it, which is really a nice extra bonus.
And we also need to mention something that you said earlier, not tested on animals. It's humans.
Just tested on Vince and myself and friends and family.
Fantastic. I got to learn all about your life and some incredible stories with yourself growing up, celebrities, but the workings of how you make a conglomerate when it comes to beauty, fragrance, working with people. His memoir, My Pursuit of Beauty, A Cosmetic Chemist Reveals the Glitz, the Glam, and the Batshit Crazy. It's an excellent read itself. You can find it on Vince's website as well as other places. Vince, you've done well, and I hope that everyone is able to get a look at your documentary that will be coming out later this year. Where possibly will this documentary be for the masses?
Yeah, it's most likely going to land either on Hulu, Netflix, or Apple TV. We're kind of talking to all the platforms to see where, kind of what the best deal is going to be, where we actually belong. So we're kind of going through this film festival route, to your point, to try and get some critic feedback, and then that is going to help kind of steer it where we feel the best demographic is going to be for it to live. And your buddy Emma Samms is in it, which I know you're a big fan of.
Yeah, and I was going to segue to this here as well, because kind of that last question. You loved her from Dynasty, myself from General Hospital. She appeared briefly last year. She was supposed to, on General Hospital, she was supposed to do more, but because of COVID and her being overseas, it couldn't, kind of had to come to an end. Please tell me that Emma Samms is everything that I want her to be, which is amazing and fantastic.
My God, I got zero disappointment for you there. She is one of the most loveliest ladies I've ever met. Forget celebrities, anybody, just in general. She's absolutely lovely. But to answer the question, she could not be any more lovely. Very, very sweet, and just as nice as can be, and absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. By the way, I joked with her the whole time that she's like pretty much aging in reverse. And I'm not even kidding. She looks unbelievable.
Yeah, I can believe that for sure. Absolutely.
So very, very nice.
Yeah, if there was that case of being starstruck, I think I would be starstruck there. And yeah, it's just a celebrity crush. Good kinds, of course.
And sometimes you're always kind of afraid to ask, but in this case, she, again, it could not be any better.
Good. I'm happy to hear that. Hey, Vince, we've spent the time together talking about your career, how you've created your empire and all these wonderful things that you are doing. Is there anything that you've yet to accomplish that you need to do within, let's say, the next 5-10 years?
Yeah, I think it's really more about my legacy, because I'm one of the last Spinnato men. I do have a cousin who had a couple boys, but we in the before I knew he was going to have boys, we thought that me and him were the last two. So I was always kind of a goal was to get my name on the world stage as far as through a beauty product line. So hopefully it's going to be, 100 years past I'm gone. I'm hoping that's kind of my ultimate goal. So I'm nowhere near that yet, but I'm hoping to be a Chanel, Louis Vuitton, Tom Ford type name for myself, and like these brands again, like Cartier or Hermes have been around for 200 years. That's my ultimate goal for sure. So if I can just pull it off, that would be. But I won't know till I'm dead. So we'll see. we'll see. You have to let me know, 'cause I'm older than you.
Oh, by like a year. Oh, yeah,
Okay.
that's it. Yeah, no. So I think how old did you say you were?
I'm 47.
Yeah, I'm 46. So we're the same age.
We're tied.
Yeah, exactly. Who counts age after a certain time? Nobody
That's right.
does. Nobody does. Hey, Vince, I just want to say thank you for coming on to our podcast here tonight. Again, I enjoyed reading your memoir, and I look forward to watching your documentary when it comes out in the fall. I think it's going to be just an extension of this fantastic book that I got to read. So thank you very much.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
We'll make sure that we put all of Vince's social media sites and have them be available to you wherever you are going to be able to access them. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us here on Tales of the LGBTQ+. On behalf of Vince, I want to thank all of you for being here tonight, reminding you to be good and always text when you get home. Until next time, everybody.
Thank you, Doug.